Hi YouTube. You're very well aware of what's going on in Japan, and this is just 12 days of earthquakes since the tsunami and the nuclear disaster in Japan, and I have set it to sticky spots so you can see how plastered the shelf of Japan is being bombarded. And it's absolutely true what Sins is talking about in his video, that there's a lot of tubes, volcanic tubes, in this vicinity here in Japan. Japan is a very seismic active area. We have the Pacific Plate lying out here, and we also have volcanic activity in Japan, and a lot. And Japan, as we speak, is already doomed, and it's just a question of time. Japan is going to finally go down when Fukushima is going to go erupt. And if you pause it right there for a moment, and you can see this is HARP active on March 11. There's a link for this picture underneath. But you see the frequency here, the resonance is around 2.5 Hertz. This is where it resonates, and I want to show you something else here while we are at resonance. So I was looking for it, see what I could find, and we know that the earthquake took place in a depth of 24 kilometers, so that is around here. So if we take that line, you can see here, this is here, it resonates on 3 Hertz. And you see it becomes a flat line. So here we have resonance. So it is very likely that we could place HARP as a suspect for this devastating earthquake in Japan. We know Japan is not very interested in New World Order. They're not interested in the Kyoto Treaty. And they also was planning to launch a vehicle, a car, which could drive on water alone. And you don't mess with the oil industry, and well, they are all tied together, the oil industry and the military industrial complex. So it's very likely to believe that when we see the resonance is fitting with the crust of Japan, and in exact depth and on the right amount of hertz, and it's I won't say beyond reasonable doubt, but I would say there's a high probability that HARP was involved in this devastating earthquake in Japan. And as you see here, Japan is literally being bombarded with one earthquake after another. 731 over 12 days since the tsunami, since the big earthquake. And I made a little calculation. Today is my birthday, well, 44 years old, and I made a calculation that those numbers here, 731 is 11, and 12 days gives 3, and 3 times 11 is 33. But this is the marker, as you see here. That will signify when it is over for Japan. When this one erupts, this entire part of Japan, from here, this fold, and this fold down here, this is going to slide into the ocean as a giant landslide. And I've also accumulated some pictures from Japan, how it looks like. This is a seismic map of Japan, and all these dots here are actually underneath, in Japan, volcanic activity, and that is all the red dots. So basically Japan is one giant volcano, if you like, and that is a very unstable area to live in. I would not like it myself. And there's another example here where you also see it, and you can see the front of volcanoes is sitting actually on the east coast of Japan. That is that color, and the triangles you see here is all the volcanoes. and there's a lot of them, and they are on the east side of Japan. So here there is a pressure relief, and over here there is a pressure relief. And just to illustrate it, really simple, this is a piece of plastic, bubble plastic, and you can see in here there's a lot of holes in it, right? So what is going on here, kind of like figurative speaking, is that this out here, that is the continental slope of Japan. We can go back and look at the original. As you see, let's just go a few seconds back, like there. There you can see what I'm illustrating. This is Japan on the black surface, and this is the continental slope. So what's going on right now is that this continental slope is being compressed because the tubes are collapsing, and in the end, as you hear here, that is all the earthquakes taking place, the 731 and more to come, and in the end there is nothing on the other side to hold Japan as an island back. So this one will simply just slide in like that. It will just fall over into the sea, and on that account it would not be advisable to be on any west coast on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, because that's going to be the world's largest tsunami in recorded history. I cannot say how big it is, but you can expect 1,000 feet tsunami on the west coast of North America and South America and Mexico. And the first one to get hit is Hawaii, and Hawaii don't have a continental slope. It is very steep, it's very short, so that will come with blunt force straight on. And funny enough, right after these earthquakes and a nuclear disaster, 2 reactors blowing up, I have a little sequence of that because I want to explain something to it, and then here in a few moments. Now we have the 731, and now weather modification. Here, this was the storm I was describing in my video, the day the storm stood still. This is over 4-hour period. You can see this area here. When I press play, you can see it's very stationary. This area here is untouched. There's absolutely no rainfall here. You can see the storm is coming in and coming in, but this part here is not moving. And I was brought to my attention there's actually a dish sitting out at something called Bunker Hill. I'll show you that in a moment. But as you see here on repeated, that this storm simply just don't go anywhere. We know that the average rainfall in California is 14 inches a year. But this storm, in the wake of the nuclear disaster, apparently there was a storm building up, a very powerful one, right after the nuclear explosions. So I was saying that because of the plume's height, I'll show you that in a moment, there would be a very low probability that any of this nuclear fallout would reach the west coast of North America and Canada. Because of the height of the plume, it was simply not high enough. But when you're generating a storm, which HARP is capable of, right after this disaster, and less than 42 hours, it's over here, and it's simply just dropping straight down on Los Angeles. And up from the bottom of this picture, here is the picture of that satellite array which is sitting out on Bunker Hill. And there's a link for that one too. You can go look at it yourself. And this is actually exactly there. This apparatus is standing right there. And if you look at this pattern here, when the picture here is gone, if you look at this line here, you can clearly see there is a barrier. for the cloud formation and how the clouds are coming in. Something here is interfering with the incoming cloud here in this area. You also see here the thunderclouds, the heavy rain, is building up around this thing. It's not penetrating its barrier, it's going around it. And watch carefully. I'm positive this storm was generated and it dropped all this nuclear material in California. And unfortunately, the reactor 3, when that blew up, that was the one with the MOX fuel. And our present day Geiger counters, the one the amateurs are having, I actually have one myself, an old analog, this one. Well, I have to have it rebooted, something is not working in it. This one can only pick up plutonium and uranium. But what's coming from the MOX fuel reactor cannot be picked up by this one. And the few people want to invest in a Geiger counter which is able to take the other isotopes. That is a very costly, very costly piece of electronics. So there's a very few people that have that, except nuclear power plants that is operating with MOX fuel. But pay attention here to what is actually happening on the screen. You can clearly see, go away, you can clearly see here that the thunderclouds are not going in over, they are forming a circle around this area. That is very visible. And you see this line too. Something is interfering here, like a beam is going through and breaking up this incoming cloud. That is very visible to you. I would suspect you could calculate that. And then another thing. This one I made for fun. Indeed I did. This one looking like a V, and that's why I just thought it was fun to make that one. But that is from the same storm. And this one is stationary too, it doesn't move. It stays in the same vicinity, which is peculiar. And again, this thing on Bunker Hill seemed to be the one that is responsible for creating and stabilizing the storm to stay in the area so it doesn't go further inland. So we know here, we've seen this before, that the HARP grid is very extensive. They have absolutely all control of weather. And many have said to me, yeah, but HARP is only an atmospheric heater, an ionosphere heater. Yeah, it is. It is basically to build a plasma up in the ionosphere for incoming missiles as a defense system. And also cosmic event. It could probably serve as a protection shield. I don't know that, but that's a possibility. But it depends on how many megahertz HARP is sending out. If we're going down in a 2 hertz scale, we're talking about a very low tone which is able to shake. It's like you have a bass guitar and you take the thickest one and you thump it, and you can feel these deep vibrations. And if you take a little thinner, you can hear the pitch is a little higher. And HARP is capable of working on all frequencies and move up to 1 billion watts, and that's a lot. So that is propelled up to the chemtrail clouds and bounced like a mirror down on the target. Or they could also use the electromagnetic field on planet Earth itself to propel and even enhance the firepower of HARP. So HARP is not just an ionosphere heater, it is also an earthquake machine. And actually HARP, in full operational, the advanced model of it, the scalar, is actually able to cut the Earth in 2 pieces, just like an orange. And I kid you not, HARP can do that. Scalar can do that. Destroy the entire planet in a heartbeat. So this is the powers we're working against. And funny enough, someone put this one to me. This one kind of reminds of HARP, doesn't it? Yeah, it kind of does, actually. A little scary. But this one also you have seen before when it comes to weather modification. And here you clearly see where they are placed, these that control the weather. This is an older map. They might have enhanced it a little, made it better and more efficient. And it's very clear which is the bastion of the coming new North American Union, and that's Colorado. They have a whole barrier around them, apparently to protect themselves or give themselves the weather, perfect weather at all times. It seems like they have a barrier. And this one, symbols here are strikingly similar to the logo for the 2012 Olympics in London, which is odd too. Why is that? But here you actually have that picture I showed you. And as you see here, this is on 2.5 Hertz. And here you see it resonates clearly. And this duration is actually from midnight through midnight, and actually 28 hours of constant beating, and possibly on the continental slope of Japan, which created this earthquake, which now also led to a nuclear disaster. So this is the people you're dealing with. And the reason why I say this piece of Japan is actually the part that's going to go off. You can clearly see there's a line here. This is the Philippine plate, Pacific plate, Eurasia plate, and here we have Japan. So this is here, it's going to snap. And up here in this direction. So this piece of Japan, when Fukushima in Tokyo is going to go erupt, this piece of land people need to be aware of. And you can clearly see here all these small specks here is volcanoes, and there's a lot of them, especially on the main island. And Tokyo is right there, and Tokyo is going to go with it. So that is how bad it looks. Japan is doomed, and the real countdown starts when Fukushima goes erupt. And we can see here some results of what is really going on. I don't know if you can see it, but you can actually see that the soil is collapsing under itself, because the crust in itself with these tubes, which is collapsing very deep down, all the way down to 50 kilometers and all the way up to the surface. There are tunnel systems, and these pipes, as I just showed you here, is being pressed together, and they're popping one by one. And that leads to this, not sinkholes, but it leads to a collapse of the sediments. And here's another example of it too. What's going on in the Japanese streets. That is not promising. Japan is falling apart right now. And this is the combined map. Someone also wanted me to talk about Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, I can talk about Gulf of Mexico. It has come to my belief that the Gulf oil spill originally was fake. They did pump oil out in the ocean, yes. And I'm see if I can illustrate it here for you and make it plausible for you to believe what I say. Here's where the Deepwater Horizon was. We know that Deepwater Horizon, or BP, surface leased Macondo well 252, but they bottom leased 296, and right here the salt dome is. Over here in 295 we have Biloxi Dome sitting here. So they were up here in this vicinity and drilling into the salt dome. And that picture I also can show you. And that is exactly what they did. You have also seen this a lot of times. And this is exactly what they did. They were actually placed here in 252, and then they drilled in this way. And they drilled straight through a fault line, the New Madrid fault line. And they have fractured the crustal layers all the way down. So in this moment we have a washout of this salt dome. And this salt dome, I also showed you, is connected to this called the Luan salt layer. This is a giant brine pool of salt deep down in Earth's crust, which is connected right here to the salt dome in Macondo well 296. And when seawater gets into this area here, this is going to dissolve, and this is going to contribute further to the collapse of the entire seabed in this area, and that's right out to the Mississippi Delta. So that pretty much illustrates what I have been saying all along. This is going to go real bad, and it's all planned, because this is what they want. They want a divided America, and that's why they have placed the superhighway in this direction on the west side of the New Madrid line. And I've just recently received some documents that it seems like that my map regarding the Navy map seems to be valid, because there will be a new port in Kansas City, and that fits with this map. A harbor in Kansas City. And if we go back to the other map again, the NAFTA highway, and look closely, where is that highway crossing? Kansas City, right there. So here would be a new harbor where ships can come in here and port in Kansas City. And that's not so far away from the main center, is it? Because this is Colorado, Denver. So that's a very short route in. And that one is already designated. It's going to be the new Interstate 135, which actually says 9. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. It's all about numbers, right? It's all about numbers. So that fit perfectly. Perfectly. So this is how it's going to look. And the reason why I say it is not oil down there. It is an asphalt volcano, Biloxi Dome. Over here, Deepwater Horizon were. But the leaks, the 7 leaks of Biloxi Dome, is an asphalt volcano. So maybe this NOAA was picking up a 20-mile long plume here, which I also have a picture of, which is the sonar picture from the fish which were dropped, and now I don't have the picture. Isn't that just wonderful? Never mind that. Here I want to illustrate again what makes me suspicious of the oil spill. You remember, you saw to begin with from CNN that there was a pipe lying on the seafloor, and it was pumping some black stuff and some white stuff and sometimes a little yellowish stuff out. And this pipe, if you remember in the back of your mind, or you still sit with the footage, I don't unfortunately, you remember that this pipe was cut very precisely, almost too perfect, for being something which was bent, right? Bent and crumpled over. It snapped in a perfect line. So what I suspect, because I know BP and Shell, they work together. They are part of this so-called Bilderberger group. So, isn't it possible that what they did was they severed this Shell pipeline and, let out a lot of crude oil for them to be able to use Corexit? So what we were watching here, and as an illustration of that there was an oil spill of proportions, But we were shown something entirely different, wasn't we? Oh yes, we were. We were shown a gusher, at least 3 feet wide, and the rover was just sitting there and monitoring it, and it was the Scandi Neptune. I think that BP Oil Disaster have that recording in one of his uploads, where Scandi Neptune is having what they were calling disbursement operation, meaning pumping correction straight into it. But that doesn't necessarily have to be true that that was what they were doing. No, what they were doing, they were simply sitting and monitoring the Biloxi Dome's eruption. That was what they were doing. And they made us all believe that that was the oil gusher. And what was it that Simmons, he said, and what he was about to disclose before they killed him? He said the pressures from down there, from those depths, were at least 100,000 psi, and there would be no man-made construction that would be able to contain or cap it, ever. And he's right, because this is exactly what is happening, as I explained to you many times, and that's one of the reasons why you need to get away from this area. The oil coming up from down there, where they actually hit an oil well, is going up through the fault line and serving as a lubricant on the entire New Madrid system. And it might be the reasons why we have had these 2 leaks up in Michigan and Illinois, where oil came out. That might be the result of all this oil with such high pressure of over 100,000 psi being shot through the fault line, through the crustal layers, and all the way up through north. And now it's served like a lubricant, just like oil in an engine, so it doesn't burn. And this is also, when it goes through the crustal layers, this is up on the surface, seafloor. I can take it here, like this. As you see here, here's the surface of the sea, and here's the sea floor. So down here, in the first crustal layers, here we have the aquifers. And where's the oil going? They're going to your water table. Plus, all the oil is being shot up through the New Madrid line. And they severed a ley line too, an energy grid line in the Gulf of Mexico. So I strongly believe that the Gulf oil spill was faked. But what they did was they ignited the Biloxi Dome and thereby created that what we are now facing, which is a NLE 2011 New Madrid fault line exercise. And it doesn't take 2 and 2 to count that one and put it together. And in reality, when the London bombing took place, they happened to have an exercise against terrorism. When in Madrid, in Madrid, Spain, in Europe, they also had an anti-terror exercise, and trains blew up. Right? So we have a subway bombing, we also have a train bombing, and they happen to have an exercise, anti-terror exercise, on the very same day that the so-called airplanes were hijacked and flew into the World Trade Center. On the very same day. Now they're having an exercise here in the United States, which is a national exercise, of a New Madrid fault line system collapse. Well, since the oil spill began, there have been over 1,000 earthquakes in the Arkansas area. And that is significant. That's very significant. I don't know if I have a picture that illustrates that. I do not think I do. I haven't put everything over yet. So this is as bad as it gets. Literally, as bad as it gets. Japan is falling apart. So is United States. And it really fits with this picture. Also, we have to be very aware of Mount Rainier, as some will call it. We also have to be very aware of St. Helens and especially Yellowstone. And after the Gulf oil spill down here began, all three of them has been awakened again. They are beginning to be active volcanoes. So the question is, when is that going to happen? I could imagine that will happen after the pressure release here, and the entire continent of North America is going to sink into this hole and create this deep trench on the New Madrid fault line zone. When this one sinks in, pressure is being admitted to this area, and that might trigger a volcanic eruption either from Mount Rainier or maybe from St. Helens, but most likely Yellowstone Park, because this one is really showing signs of activity, and there's been a lot of earthquakes up there. And it started actually on this date, on the 26th of August 2010, and this illustrates a 13-hour continuous non-stop earthquake at the caldera in Yellowstone Park. This is significant, and this is something we need to really keep an eye on. Right now the headlines are Japan, and I truly understand that, but I don't have a timeline on it. I do not have a timeline on when the New Madrid line is going to go off. I have absolutely no clue, but I could suspect it's going to be late April or in the middle of their exercise. The exercise is beginning the 28th of April, and when it ends, I think it's 3 weeks later, we might have an America looking like that. And we also have earthquakes here, and we also have earthquakes here now. We also have earthquakes up here in America. This is new. The old New Madrid line is actually going, as the map is shown, but it's going south of Indiana, up through Ohio, and in here, where the inlet through between Canada and United States, the Hudson Bay I think it's called. Here's the old Madrid line, but the new one is going to go in this direction. There's been cracks in Kansas, there's been cracks found in Illinois, and it seems very plausible that actually these two spills which has been up here because of the New Madrid system, there's fault lines in Michigan, which is up here. Cracks appeared in Michigan, as you saw a video of. Cracks is appearing in Illinois. So there's reason to believe that the New Madrid line's fault system is going to take another turn this time. And we have Kansas City in this area, where we're going to have a new harbor, a port. So this is as terrible as it possibly gets. And here we can take it one more time in 40 seconds, and you can see it's been very busy in Japan. It doesn't look promising. So right now Japan is doing what I'm showing you here, falling apart in the side like that, and then the rest will simply just follow in. But that's gonna be when Fukushima gonna erupt. I don't know the time frame for that, but as soon as Fukushima erupted, I would advise people living on this island here, this piece of island, and get away into safety. And then we have these two explosions, and then we have this weather system just after it. But here you see the plume is not high, so there's very good reason to believe that this would be a very restricted area, not restricted but in a limited radius of the disaster. This is approximately 400 feet high. This one is even higher, but still not reaching the jet stream. And this is the MOX fuel reactor. This one is significantly higher, maybe 600 feet, 700 feet, but that doesn't get it up to 10,000 feet up to the jet stream, does it? No, it don't. So that was my reason for believing that it will not reach North America, this stuff. It will be in a specific location called Japan and in parts of the Pacific Ocean. But this vast storm, as we see it here, actually a little further in, here, this one was lingering for hours and hours and hours, and it dropped 9 inches of rain. So you won't pick anything up if there's any radioactive material in North America now because of Fukushima, because your Geiger counters won't pick it up. So you don't know, and you won't be told either. You can count on that, because that will create total panic that you have radioactive fallout. But if you see sickness beginning to arise, then you're definitely sure that something is not right, and it will be the best thing for you yourself to leave the area. But wait for the symptoms. And another thing is, you need to keep a very close eye on the animals now. See how they're reacting. See if they're seeking away, or they don't want to go out and stuff like that, seem like they're scared. That is a strong indicator. Look for rainbows in the sky. And also, don't forget to keep looking up on your sky, because we're also going to have a cosmic event of some sort, and it's going to be visible to the naked eye before it arrives. I don't know what it is coming, if it's this cloud, the interstellar cloud, or there is a rogue planet out there. I don't know. I truly want to see it with my own naked eyes, visually, not through a camera, to rule out any kind of lens effect. But here on Earth, World War III is on the rise, and all these things, I think all these things, the Gulf oil spill, the Japan incident, and the strange weather phenomena, and all the earthquakes happening, they are all distractions, and all part of a strategic plan to keep you distracted, but also to hurt their enemies, or potential enemies, or putting pressure on them, like they're pushing pressure on Japan by creating such earthquakes. And question is, when you look at this in Japan, how many times of these earthquakes has been involved with harm? I truly don't know. But this is a lot of earthquakes in 12 days, 731. That is a buckload, and they are all powerful. The Japanese people can feel these. They are up in the range of 5 and up. That is significant. The blue dots illustrates how deep they are. This is around 25 kilometers, all these blue ones. The red one is very shallow, about 2.4 kilometers down. And the one we had, the devastating one that destroyed Sendai, was down in the depths of 24 kilometers. And it also, as I showed you, it fits with the resonance table that they hit the right string in the crust in Japan with 2.5 hertz for a duration of 26 hours, hammering on this very, very fragile area. And now we know the rest of the story. That's basically what I have to say for today about this area, this subject. So now I'm going to enjoy my birthday and upload this to you. And pray for the people of Japan. They seriously need that. And as a whole, pray for everybody, because we are heading into a world war, possibly June. I think Iran is going to intervene in June. They're going to come on as a player, and then we know the rest. It will be an all-out war in the Middle East. So I believe all these things happening around the planet, all these mysterious things we cannot explain, but only theorize about, or create hypotheses about, it's all distractions. for what's really taking place in the Middle East and what is about to be becoming a full-blown war. We just have to sit and wait, because we can't stop it unless we really want to. But I don't see that coming. It is prophesied that this is how it's going to be. So be it. Be at peace. Be happy. God bless you. Okay, this is the last input in this show here. I've just been reamed my butt off that I'm not mentioning the CMEs from the sun, that they also cause an earthquake, and there was a CME on the 8th of March, and it supposedly hit Earth a couple of days later. But here I sit with a graph, a diagram from 1975 and all the way up to 2006. So it's not all up to date, but here we have the latest solar maximum. And actually, if you look at this graph, it doesn't really indicate that this has something to do with CMEs. Not really. But what do we see instead? We see a steady climb. We also see a little down, where there we see a climb, and it keeps climbing. And in the year 2005, there was equivalent to 30,000 earthquakes. And that is an exponential rate that the earthquakes are taking place here on planet Earth. So in the last almost 20 years, actually since 1994 and up to now, it's been rising rapidly. And that I call out to be due to post-glacial rebound. I do not lean up against that this should be sun activity. I'm not even sure we're being told the truth about that. How can we disprove that NASA comes out and say what they're saying, that the CMEs are causing earthquakes? Well, that is what they're saying. But this graph is not showing that, because from 1994 and all the way up to now, Earth should have then been bombarded with CMEs. And that's not the case, is it? So this graph and the CMEs don't really correspond to each other. I see this as a post-glacial rebound, and they're helping it along with those electronic devices they're using. That is how I see it. It's not just CME related. The graph is showing something else. It's showing something which is a little more earthbound. Post-glacial rebound. Japan, as we speak, is already doomed, and it's just a question of time. Japan is going to finally go down when Fukushima is going to go erupt. And if you pause it right there for a moment, and you can see this is HARP active on March 11. There's a link for this picture underneath. But you see the frequency here, the resonance is around 2.5 Hertz. This is where it resonates. And I want to show you something else here while we are at resonance. So I was looking for it, see what I could find. And we know that the earthquake took place in a depth of 24 kilometers. Hi YouTube. You're very well aware of what's going on in Japan, and this is just 12 days of earthquakes since the tsunami and the nuclear disaster in Japan. And I have set it to sticky spot so you can see how plastered the shelf of Japan is being bombarded. And it's absolutely true what Dot Sins is talking about in his video, that there's a lot of tubes, volcanic tubes, in this vicinity here in Japan. Japan is a very seismic active area. We have the Pacific plate lying out here, and we also have volcanic activity in Japan, and a lot. And well, they are all tied together, the oil industry and the military industrial complex. So it's very likely to believe that when we see the resonance is fitting with the crust of Japan, and in exact depth and on the right amount of hertz. And it's I won't say beyond reasonable doubt, but I would say there's a high probability that HARP was involved in this devastating earthquake in Japan. And as you see here, Japan is literally being bombarded with one earthquake after another. 731 over 12 days since the tsunami. So that is around here. So if we take that line, you can see here, this is here, it resonates on 3 hertz, and you see it becomes a flat line. So here we have resonance. So it is very likely that we could place HARP as a suspect for this devastating earthquake in Japan. We know Japan is not very interested in New World Order. They're not interested in the Kyoto Treaty, and they also was planning to launch a vehicle, a car, which could drive on water alone. And you don't mess with the oil industry since the big earthquake. And I made a little calculation. Today is my birthday, well, 44 years old. And I made a calculation that those numbers here, 731 is 11, and 12 days gives 3, and 3 times 11 is 33. But this is the marker, as you see here. That will signify when it is over for Japan. When this one erupts, this entire part of Japan, from here, this fold, and this fold down here, this is going to slide into the ocean as a giant landslide. And I have also accumulated some pictures from Japan, how it looks like. This